So let's get started, all right? Again, my name is Vanessa, and today we're going to be talking about animation in PowerPoint. And there's so much you can do with animation, and I won't be able to get through all of it today, but I think I'm going to give you a good basis to start with if you've never used animation before, or even if you have, maybe I can teach you a few tricks to make your animations work a little more seamlessly, all right? If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to put it in the chat. I'm going to be checking it periodically, but I'll probably answer most of the questions at the end. So let's get started. So what is animation in PowerPoint? Real simple. Animation just adds movement or sound even to your presentation. And there are a lot of times that you can use animation to make it, a more interesting slide deck. You may want to just emphasize a point. A lot of times people pack a lot of content onto the screen, and that's not necessarily something I recommend, but you can definitely use animation to kind of like pinpoint something on the screen and make it more prominent so people kind of sit with that message and go home with it and take in what you're saying. You can also illustrate dynamic processes. So I'm sure if you've used PowerPoint quite a bit, you've used a lot of smart art or developed charts or things like that. You can actually use animation to kind of break that down bit by bit and take people through an actual process. You can also pace the delivery of information using animation, which is actually what I'm doing right now. So usually people just kind of throw up all of their bullets on one slide and just kind of go through them all at once. I'm actually doing it little by little and using animation to kind of animate a bullet one at a time, and then also put these images to the left to kind of go one by one and not overwhelm everybody with information. And you can also help the audience focus. Again, um, you know, you could have very long presentations or a lot of content to get through. And sometimes it's nice to just have animation, just kind of highlight something on the screen to get people's focus in the right area. I see we have a question. I don't hear anything. Waverlin, you might just have to, you might log in and log out, and then your sound may work after that. Alrighty. So let's go through some animation do's and don'ts, okay? So here are the things that you should try to do when you animate your slide decks. Um, Honestly, keep it as simple as possible. As we go through the animation options, you're gonna see that you have literally dozens, maybe even hundreds of combinations that you could do with animation. But just keep in mind what you have to say, your actual message in your slide deck is the most important, and the animation should enhance your presentation, okay? Never make something so crazy off the wall, bouncy across your screen that it kind of distracts from what you're trying to say. And you can keep your animations very subtle. There's going to be, again, a lot of different animation types that you can see. Some are really nice looking and subtle and professional. Others are kind of off the wall crazy. And sometimes there are reasons to use the off the wall crazy ones, but for the most part, you want to keep it pretty simple, okay? And also you want to keep your animations consistent. Again, we have a lot of animations that you can use. I usually give advice, maybe use one or two animations, throughout your presentation, maybe a third one, but you want to just, even though you have access to dozens, don't use them all. You don't need to. And I accidentally clicked my screen and went to the third bullet a little easier, faster. But you want to make it easy to present your slide deck. And what do I mean by that? So if you're building a slide deck for yourself, you know when the animations are going to appear, that's fine. But a lot of times, you might be building a slide deck for somebody else. And if they're not familiar with animations, you don't want to have them click through 20 different animations that they're not familiar with. So if you're building for somebody else, you want to make sure that the presenter is comfortable with using animations and maybe even automate some of them so it's much easier for them to get through the presentation. And I'm going to be showing you how to do that. And then realize that good animation takes time. So it really depends on what you're trying to do in your slide deck. But adding animation to it can be really time consuming, especially if it's your first time using it. There's going to be a lot of trial and error. So make sure you give yourself enough time to add the animation and don't make it a last minute thing that you just kind of throw into your slide deck without testing, because that's just a recipe for disaster. And let me kind of show you what I mean. So this was a slide deck that I did for someone else. And it was a couple of years ago, actually, when we were talking about Epic Together. And, instead of putting a bunch of content on a slide, a bunch of text that described what Epic Together was trying to do, we decided to just visualize it. So this was showing what the current, at the time, WCM clinical sites were. And then I used animation to kind of just illustrate what the NYP sites were in addition to these Epic sites, and how we wanted to transition them so that we could all just be one big Epic family, essentially. So all of this was done kind of using the same trick in PowerPoint animation option, but it took me forever to do this because there are just so many components on the screen. So again, you really want to make sure, if you want something to look nice, to just take the time, set aside some time to go through it, test it, and make sure it looks good. And that, I had to give this to, my CIO. So I sat with him and made sure that it worked and that he was comfortable using it. Okay. I think I've got a question in the chat. Oh, great, Waverly. Glad you could hear it. Awesome. So let's go through some animation don'ts, okay? These are things that I have seen in the wild that they're probably going to give you a headache. They gave me one, but these are things you definitely want to steer clear from, okay, before we get into the demo. So one thing that you want to be very, very wary of is you don't want your animations to be too slow. So that step one came out very quickly, but let's look at step two, okay? You can definitely control the speed of your animations, but when they're going mind-numbingly slow, you're going to lose your audience. So always keep in mind the timing of your animations, okay? And don't use fun animations with no purpose. You're going to see what I mean in just a second. So you've got step one, you've got step two. Those came out pretty quickly and normally, but then if you just randomly throw in one of these, I don't know, kind of bouncy animations, it makes no sense. It's kind of confusing. So always make sure that you animate with purpose, okay? If you're just going through a step-by-step process, again, keep it consistent so that it looks nice and professional. And don't use inconsistent animation. So I've got kind of a wipe down for this first step. Then I've got a weird like clock thing going on for step two, and then a really fancy twirly thing for step three. Stay away from that as well. Again, if we're talking about a process, keep it consistent. And don't animate against the flow. So you saw how in this smart art, I've been using the same smart art the whole time, that we have a step one, step two, and step three process going down, okay? But notice how the animation wipes in this scenario. It's going up, okay? And it's not the worst thing, but you can actually animate it so that the origin of the animation starts at the top and then fades down, so that it kind of like goes with the flow and further emphasizes what you're trying to illustrate. So again, be really mindful of like all of these little tweaks that you can do when you animate, all right? And I think the next slide is probably the worst offense I've ever seen. So here we go. Yes, don't animate every letter on your slide, please. What I just showed, I'm only showing it for illustration purposes, but please don't actually do it. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. I actually saw a presentation where somebody did this on almost every slide, and this was like kind of internally my reaction to it. And I'm sure it wasn't just me, it was everybody there. So definitely, I'm going to show you when we animate text later on today, where this function is, and just to please avoid it, okay? So let's get started with the animation. Do we have any questions before I get into the demo? I don't think I see any in the chat. No problem. But if anybody has any questions while I'm going through this, feel free to just throw something in the chat, and I'll try to stop when when it makes sense to. Okay. Some things to note: I'm working on a Mac laptop today, so I'm using the Mac version of PowerPoint. So if you use a Windows version, it's going to look very similar. It's going to look almost the same. If you're using the O365 version, it might look slightly different, but it's got most of the features that we're going to be talking about today. But if you can use, a desktop version to animate, I highly recommend that you do so. I'm just moving this down so I can make sure that you guys see everything and that I can see it, this little toolbar at the top. Alrighty. So there are two types of animation we're going to be talking about today: how to animate something on a slide, and then transitions between slides. Okay. So let's do animation on a slide, which is the main focus for today. So let's talk about basic animation. All right. You can animate anything on a slide pretty much. They're called objects. All right. And you can animate things like this, like a big object, an image, a shape. You can animate text and you can animate images, all right? And to add animation, all you have to do is select an object on your slide, so any one of these things, and you're gonna click the animation tab, which is right here at the top. So you'll see slideshow, animations, transitions, you want animations, okay? And you're gonna notice that my taskbar at the top has changed into a lot of animation options. So you've got these green animations here, these yellow ones, and then the red ones. So the green ones are called entrance effects. So that gets an animation to appear on your slide. And then you've got the yellow ones, which are called emphasis. And emphasis, usually your object is already on the screen and you may want to do something to just highlight that it's there to make it more prominent. And then you've got exit animations, which just have the object disappear from the screen. Okay. These are the three main things that you're going to use. And we'll get into some of these other ones as well. But if anything, when you animate, you're going to be using entrance, emphasis, and exit effects all the time. Okay. So let's get started animating something. I'm going to click an object, and you'll notice because I hit the animation tab, I've got this little window on the right-hand side, this taskbar, this new menu. This is called the animation pane. All right. If it ever disappears by accident, all you have to do is in the animation tab, you'll see animation pane right here, and it shows back up. Okay. So that's how you're going to control your animation. So I've got concept one clicked. And what I want to do on this slide is just make a simple animation where concept one appears, then the arrow appears, and then concept two appears. Okay, so how do I do that? We're going to use some entrance effects. So with the first object clicked, we're going to go into our green entrance effects. And you might want to expand this by clicking the little caret at the bottom, and you'll get this whole expanded list. And there are even categories of animation. So you've got basic, subtle, moderate, and exciting. Okay. Usually I stick to basic and even subtle. Moderate, maybe I'll use every once in a while, and exciting, I don't use very much. Okay. Again, I'm trying to keep this professional. So I'm going to choose, let's see. I wanted to choose Zoom. Let's see. Oh, there it is. This one. All right. So anytime I animate something, I get a little preview of what I did. And there's also a number that appears. The little number does not appear when you actually present, but it's a little note that tells you the order of animations on your slide. Okay. So if I do the arrow now, and let's say I want to do a wipe. All right, so I've got two animations, and now you'll see 1, 2. So that's the order of my animations. And let's try concept 2 here. We're going to do the same thing we did with concept 1. We're going to zoom out. Perfect. So now I've set up my animation. I'm going to change some things to tweak it the way I like, but you'll notice that on the animation pane, I now have 1, 2, 3. All these objects are now together, and I can click any one of these to kind of tweak it with these special menus on the bottom. Okay. Um, Before I get into tweaking things, you'll notice that when I click on any of these, I also have these arrows here and this little X. So what the arrows do is they change the order of the animation on the screen. So right now I have concept 1 as the first thing that's animated, but if I change my mind and want it to be at the bottom, I just move the little down arrow, or I can move it back up. All right. And if for some reason I wanted to get rid of an animation, all I would do is highlight one of them and click the X, and it goes away. You can also hit delete. All right. So if you want to add the animation back in, you just go again to your animation when clicking it and do, oh no, that wasn't wipe. That was actually one more, that was a zoom. Yep. All right, perfect. So now that I have all of these animated, I can actually hit this preview button over here on the top left, and it gives me a quick preview of what it's going to look like on the screen. However, it doesn't like let me know what the timing is going to be like or anything like that. I have to kind of tweak that beforehand. So here's what I do. I'm going to go to concept one and go to effect options. And these change depending on the animation type that you've selected. But what it does is essentially effect options lets you change certain things about the animation. So right now, this is a zoom animation. Right now, it's telling me that the animation starts at the center of the object and zooms out. But I can also change that to zoom from the center of the slide and not the object. And that's just for this particular animation. I can decide what I want to do after the animation appears. I could just leave it on the screen, which is don't dim, or I could even hide it after the animation is completed or on the next mouse click. Usually I leave stuff on the screen unless I need to have it go away. But if I need to have it go away, I'll usually use exit effects, which I'll show you in just a moment. You can also add sound to your animations. There are some preloaded sounds here. I don't normally add sound to my animations, but there could be occasions where you might need to add a sound to your animation, and you can choose these pre-selected ones or even upload another sound that you might have downloaded to your computer. All right, so that's how effect options works. Next, we have timing. So timing is really important. Usually animation defaults to on click, which means that this animation will show up when I click my mouse or even my space bar. So let me just kind of give you an idea of how that works. I'm going to put this in slideshow mode. So if I was presenting this, the way the animation works is I'm going to click my space bar, concept one shows up. I'm going to click my space bar again, the arrow shows up, and I'm going to click my space bar one more time and concept two shows up. So all of this is very manual, okay? If I wanted to make things more automated, I could change things so that animations show up with previous ones automatically or even after previous ones, and I can decide what the delay will be for that, all right? So for example, let's say I wanted concept two to show up with the arrow and not separately. So what I could do with this is with concept two selected, I could just do with previous. Let me go back into slideshow mode. So I've got one hit of my space bar. And then remember, it was three altogether. But now when I do it, they both show up together. All right. Let me go back. You can also play with the duration of how quickly these show up on the screen. So right now, they're all appearing very fast within half a second. All right. And you can even play around with this even more with this little fine tuning mechanism right here. But you can also make things a little slower if you wanted to. Generally, I don't recommend, unless you're trying to make a very specific point in your slide, I don't recommend doing anything really less than 2 seconds. Again, like I was showing you, when animation is very, very slow, it really drags your presentation down. So try to make sure when you're looking at the timing of your animations that they're pretty fast. All right. I usually do like even 1 second. All right. That's probably fine. And you can even decide if some of your animations repeat over and over again, maybe 2 times, maybe until you move on to the next thing. It just repeats over and over. All right. Um, and when I was talking about the effect options, so we've got for the arrow, we had like a special wipe animation. And right now the wipe goes from the bottom up. So the animation goes from the bottom here up like this. And I had mentioned before, don't animate against the flow. So really it should be animated where it goes from here to kind of show direction. All right. And you can change that with the property. So we can go from the left. So now when I play it, perfect. All right. The arrow's going from left to right, showing direction, which is what we want. Okay. So that's how you show or how you start putting animation in your slides. Okay. Really basic. You're just clicking on objects, adding something from, here in the entry or the entrance animations, and then playing around here with the order of things and the timing of things, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. But how can you kind of add all these things together to make more complicated ones? So let's go on to the next one. All right, let's emphasize concepts. All right, so these are things that are already on the screen and you want to use the emphasis animation options. All right, so I have a quote here from The Office. Would I rather be feared or loved? Easy, both. I want people to be afraid of how much they love me. This was Michael Scott. And I want to animate this part of the quote so that it is emphasized because it is the punchline and the best part of the entire thing. So here's where I can start using my yellow options. These are, again, the emphasis ones. So I've got this part selected and I want to animate it. Again, we have basic, subtle, moderate, and exciting. I think I'm going to do font color. I want the font color to change when I'm presenting it so that it is highlighted. And you'll see that it gave me a quick little preview and I've got that little one there to show me that it is animated. All right. Oh, and just a thing that I forgot to mention before. When you add animation to a slide, you'll notice here on the left-hand side where I've got kind of all my slides lined up, there's a little star on the side of some of the slides, and that indicates that you have added animation to the slide, okay, which is, it's really a nice little indicator when you're going back through it and you're making sure that you've got all your animations in order. All right, so I've got this emphasis one selected, and again I can go into my effect options, my timing, triggers I'll get into a little later, and I've also got text animations. Okay, so let me go back into my effect options. It gave me a default color of red. I can make it any color I want even. I can go into my color wheel. I could pick this like crazy purple, which would probably stand out quite a bit. So I'll just select it. And again, I can choose for the animation to go away after I'm done. I'll keep it on there. And I've got the timing again. So I'm going to leave it on a click, and maybe I'll make it just a wee bit faster. And again, you can check things in the preview of how it's going to look. But if you really want to test the clicks and things like that, you want to go into slide show mode and play from the current slide. So I'm clicking my space bar to make sure that everything works and it looks good. So I'm going to go back out into my presentation and start fiddling with more of my slides. Before I go into the next animation type, I just want to make sure, does anybody have any questions about the basic animation I've shown so far? Anything with the animation pane or timing? All right, doesn't look like we have anything right now. That's okay. So let me move on. So this is a really cool trick that I like to do with animation, which is making objects disappear and transition on a slide, which is what I did with that Epic slide. I had all these logos appear and then disappear and transition into Epic logos. Okay, there's no more Athena Health, it's Epic now. All right, so how did I do that? So I'm going to show you a simplified version of that here. What I want to do is I want to make a transition where I'm showing some old technology we used to use, like this very like little brick Nokia phone that everybody had at one point. I had one. And I want it to morph into the technology we use today that's a little sleeker and nice, like this fancy iPhone. So this is where exit animations come into play. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to animate this bad boy first. I'm going to put him right in the middle of the slide. All right. And we're going to have it appear on the slide. We're going to do, let's do a fade. We're going to have it fade in. Make it a little slower for drama. And then I'm going to have it disappear. So that's where exit effects come in. And you'll see they're very similar to the entry effects. They just have it disappear in the same manner. So I'm also going to do a fade, but it's going to fade out. All right. Oops. Hold on one second. There's supposed to be two animations there. Let me try one more time. So we've got fade in. Perfect. And then we're going to do fade out. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. So when you see in the animation pane, I have two animations assigned to the same object. I've got a 1 and 2 here. It fades in and out. Perfect. But now what I want to happen is that as the Nokia phone fades out, I want the iPhone to fade in at the same time. So what I'm going to do is drag the iPhone on top of the Nokia. All right. And I'm going to have that one now fade in. All right. So let's look at what that looks like right now. So let me play. So I've got the Nokia, great. It fades out. And now I've got the iPhone. That's not quite what I wanted. There's not that like cool transition effect where it kind of morphs into the next thing. So this again is where the timing comes in. All right. Let's go into the timing menu here on the right. And I want the third animation, which is the iPhone, to appear when exactly at the same time when the Nokia disappears. So that's what we want to use again with previous to automate it, right? So let's see what that looks like. Let me go back. Got the Nokia. It's going to disappear. And now as it's disappearing, the iPhone should appear. Perfect. So that gives more of the morphing effect that looks really cool on a screen. And this is really cool when, for example, on this slide right here that I did, you'll see all of these animations attached to it. And I use that morphing effect to basically remove one image and make another one appear as I was going through my bullet points, right? So it's a nice way to have a lot of objects on a slide, but people aren't necessarily seeing all the objects at the same time. Same thing with this animation here. You can see it now kind of in its full glory. There were a lot of animations going on, a lot of things that were animated. And basically, there's only really two animations happening. I've got the initial clinical sites, and then the NYP ones disappear and fade when the epic ones show up. So that took a lot of timing and coordination, but that's all this is, just multiplied by 20, all right? So that's how you can do that cool morphing effect to kind of make a really cool, emphasize a concept on a screen and just keep a lot of concepts on a slide, but have them appear and disappear when you would like them to, all right? If you've got any questions about that or need me to show it again, feel free to throw it up in the chat, all right? So now let's move on to smart art. You can animate smart art, which is great. And for the most part, smart art, one second, let me just make sure that I've got this set up correctly. Yeah, it looks like it's good. Okay. So right now I've got the smart art and I've got step 1, step 2, and step 3. And I want to animate it so that, I've got step 1 while I'm talking, and then it shows me step 2, and then it shows step 3. So I want to kind of break it down. So let's add some animation to it. We are going to, let's try again. We'll do a wipe and we'll have it come from, again, the left because we want it to go in the same direction. But you'll notice I only have a 1 right here, okay? Let me show you what this looks like. So you'll see that it wipes the entire thing across, the whole slide, and that's not really what I want. So let's go to this special section here at the bottom. Actually, I think what happened is it does not recognize it as smart art. So we're going to try one more thing. Let's just add the smart art. Give me 1 second, guys. Apologies. There's a little bit of a tricky thing going on that I would like to correct. Insert. Here we go. Let's insert some smart art. We are going to do a process and we'll do this one. Perfect. All right. And I'm going to do step 1, step 2, and step 3. So we'll just do it right from the beginning. All right. And I'll make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see it on the screen. Perfect. All right. So let's try this again. I've got the smart art here. I want to animate it and I want to make sure that it's separated into different entities when I am speaking. So we're going to add wipe one more time. Let's get rid of that. Perfect. We are going to do it from the left. All right. So now you'll notice when I click the animation pane, I have something called Smart Art Animation, which is what I was looking for earlier. All right. It was not recognizing it as Smart Art, unfortunately, but that's okay. We'll just do it again. So when you are animating Smart Art, you get 3 options for animation. You have as one object, all at once, and one by one. And as one object and all at once sound the same. They're a little bit different, okay? So right now the default is as one object. Let me show you what that looks like one more time. Um, so you're going to notice that the whole thing goes across the screen from left to right. Boom, one big wipe across the screen. So as one object treats the smart art as one giant entity that is animated, okay? All at once sounds like the same thing, but in this version, PowerPoint recognizes that there's 3 different parts to this chart, and they're animated at the same time, but also all 3 of these components get their own separate animation. So let me just show you what that looks like. So play from current slide. And again, so you'll notice instead of wiping entirely across the screen, each one of these got their own little subtle animation of being wiped across the screen, even though they all showed up at the same time. They kind of had a little bit of a difference from the other option, which is as one object. What I'm looking for is actually one by one. So let's see what that looks like. So let's say I'm giving a presentation and I say, well, in step 1, we're going to do A, B, and C. And then we're going to get to step 2. I click my mouse again. We're going to do X, Y, Z. And then finally, we get to step 3 and we're going to do blah, 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 and we're all done. Okay, so you can see the difference now with that one by one. I'm able to go through each concept separately on its own mouse click or spacebar click or whatever you use to go and transition to the next part. Okay. Right now I'm able to do that because the smart art is all connected together. But let's say I wanted just to animate step 3. So how do I do that? Okay, let me get rid of this animation really quick. And I am going to select the smart art. So if you want to just focus on animating one part of smart art, you've got to ungroup the entire object. All right. So the way that you do that is you do it a couple of ways. But normally what you can do is when you've got the smart art selected, there's going to be an option up here that says format. And there's a little icon right here. I'm going to hover over it. It says group objects. All right. And so this controls when objects are grouped together as one entity, or if you can break them up into separate components. So I'm going to click on that and hit ungroup. All right. So you'll see that it ungrouped it a little bit, but it's actually still part of the whole entity. I'm going to do it one more time. Sometimes you have to break it down more than once. I'm actually going to right click now to show you how to do it. And there should be group, ungroup. So there you can see there's 2 ways to do it. I can do it in format, or I can right click an object and ungroup it. So now you can see step 1, the arrow, step 2, this arrow, and step 3 are all different entities. So now if I just wanted to emphasize something in step 3, I can do that. And the animation only affects step 3. Okay. And step 1 and step 2 are kind of doing its own thing. All right. There's also something called triggers, which is a really kind of a newer concept in animation. And I haven't used it too much, but it's kind of cool. And now that I have them separated, I'm going to try to show you what that is like. So I've got this animation here on step 3. Let's say I wanted to add a trigger on my animation slide to have this kind of grow and shrink like I showed earlier. So triggers are basically objects that you can click on your slide that would basically trigger an animation. So let's say I wanted to click on this arrow right here, and that triggers the animation of step 3. So what I would do is click step 3, and then I would basically add my trigger. So trigger is also up here in your taskbar, and it's in here in your animation pane. So let me do it from the top because it might be easier to see. So the trigger for step 3 is when I click, I think it might be freeform object 15 is this arrow. Step 3 appears. So let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to play from current slide. And when I click the arrow, step 3 should grow. Perfect. So triggers are kind of cool. I haven't used them too much, but you might have an animation or a slide where you've got like a 1, 2, 3, and you click 1 and then like more information pops out. You click 2, more information pops out. It's kind of a cool feature. Again, it's a new thing, and definitely I'd recommend playing around with it. But that's how triggers work. And you can basically trigger anything on a page. You could trigger this title here. You could trigger this over here. Any object can be a trigger for another object. All right. Let me move on to path animation. All right, which I think is the coolest form of animation. Remember how I talked about ungrouping your smart art? So this was a smart art, and I ungrouped this into separate components, 1, 2, and 3, because I'm going to separately animate all of them. So path animation is really cool because it's the most customizable form of animation you can do. So what I want to do in this case is I've got these 3 little, they look like lottery balls, and I want them to like kind of fly into the funnel in order of 1, 2, 3. So how do I do that? I've got path animation right up here in the taskbar, and when I click on it, you can see that there's a bunch of different paths that are predetermined. So I could, have something go in a path of a figure 8 if I wanted to, or turn, or there's these crazy ones where it can be an inverted shape or like a cactus kind of. But you can also draw your own path by selecting draw free form, which is what I'm going to do. So essentially all I'm going to do is draw a path from the location of object number 1 and draw it into the funnel. So all I'm doing is, you'll see that my cursor is turned into like a crosshair, and I'm going to click on object 1, and I'm just clicking and dragging it into the funnel. And when I double click, it's done. All right. Let me try that one more time because I think I want it to be a little deeper into the funnel. So click and drag. There we go. That's what I wanted. And then I'm double clicking to end the drawing, and now it's going into the funnel. So really cool. And to do the other ones, I just do the same thing. So I'm going to click on item number 2, draw freeform. I'm going to have it end a little bit right here. I don't want it to be necessarily right on top of the first object. And I'm done drawing. Double click. There it goes. And let's do object number 3 really quick. Draw freeform. And I'm going to draw it in here. That one's probably going to be a little funky. All right. So now if I play from slideshow mode to see what it looks like, I've got item 1, item 2, and item 3. So that is kind of how path animation works. And that's a really simplified version of it. But honestly, it's super cool. If you find ways to use it, definitely let me know. I would love to use it more in my own presentation. I've never given the opportunity. I usually keep it pretty simple. But this is just kind of a cool thing to have up your sleeve and do in a presentation if it makes sense to do it. All right. And then the last animation I kind of want to show you are transitions. So it's not the animations we've been doing in this whole demonstration. Transitions are the animations between slides. So really quickly, I'm going to go back to our path animation slide, and we're going to go through it really quick. And then I'm going to go to the next slide, and you'll see it just appears on the screen. But sometimes it's nice to add like a really subtle transition to it. And you can go to the transitions tab at the top of your screen and add a really nice transition. I'm going to make it wider so you can see all of them. And I'm just going to do wipe. All right. So now when I go to the path animation, and again, let's go through it real quick. And now when I go to the next slide, you'll see that there's that really nice subtle wipe that goes across the screen to get to the next slide. All right. And sometimes that's really nice to use. And I would recommend, if you're going to use transitions, that you use the same one across the board. And you don't have to go into every single slide that you have and add a transition. If you pick one you like and want to use it throughout your whole presentation, there's actually all the way on the right-hand side here, apply to all, which will add it to all of your slides. So you don't have to go through 50 of them and add that transition effect. You'll notice here that there are lots of transitions. Again, we've got subtle and exciting and dynamic. Honestly, I would stick to the subtle ones. Try not to do origami maybe, or random. It's, while it could look cool, sometimes it's just a little too much, especially during a long presentation. The more subtle it is, it just is this nice little visual that kind of keeps people interested, but isn't overwhelming your content. So that's animation in a nutshell. I'm going to go into the chat. If you have any questions or would like me to show something again, just let me know, and I'm happy to do so. So I'm going to just wait a minute to see if anybody's got questions about anything. Anybody? Oh, Michelle, can you re-show the purple slide text again? Sure, I can. Let me go back into the Michael Scott slide. So let me get rid of the animation and I'll do it again. So what I did was I've got the text broken up into 3 different sections, Michelle, because I only wanted to animate one part of it, which was this quote right here. So you click on the section that you want to emphasize, and let me go back into the animation tab. And the yellow ones are the emphasis ones again. So I picked font color for this one, and it gives me a default color, which I think is always red. And if I go into effect options and property, I can change it to anything I want. So I'm going to pick that purple that I did earlier. And you can go into timing as well. Let me close that so it's easier to see. And I can change the duration. I might want to make it a little faster. 2 seconds is kind of slow in this point. So if I go into my slideshow and I click my space bar, that's how I get that purple effect to emphasize part of my text. And again, there's lots of cool ones that you can do for text. I think there's one where you can even underline. Yeah, underline can be cool. If you've got like a quote on the screen and you want to, highlight a part of it, you can do it with underline. There's lots of cool stuff you could do. Let me go back into the chat. I think we got a couple more questions. Is it possible to start and stop a video with animations? Actually, yes, Ryan, that's a good question. You can use the triggers to start an animation. So I don't have a video file on me, but actually I can send this with the email too, because I saw a tutorial that used this, and it was really a good explanation. But let me see if I can kind of demonstrate it here. So let's say, let me insert a shape. Let's pretend I have like a button here, right? But basically what the tutorial showed me is that you can have a video file. It could be on the slide. It can even be off screen, like over here somewhere. So you don't even have to have it on screen. But essentially what you would do is you would basically make this button like a trigger to start the animation or start the video on its own. So again, maybe this, I don't have a video file, so it's hard to show. But basically, this would be the trigger to play. You would click on it, and then it would play the video for you. And it doesn't have to be on screen, but you could start and stop the video that way. And I'll make sure that I send you that tutorial to do it. But that was a really good question, Ryan. Thank you for asking. I don't think I have any more questions. Oh, wait, how do you switch between looking at the slide details and slideshow mode? Okay, Bernice, good question. So again, there's 2 ways to preview animation. When I'm in my animation tab, if I have animation on a slide, I can go here to the top left in my taskbar and hit preview. And it shows me here what, the animation looks like. However, if I wanted to test the timing and hitting my space bar, making sure the animations come up, I'm going all the way to the top where it says slideshow. And there is an option that says play from start or play from current slide. What I'm doing is hitting play from current slide, so that I don't have to go all the way to the beginning of my slide deck, essentially. And I'm testing it this way. All right. And this is me testing with my space bar. And when I'm done, I just hit escape and I'm back into my PowerPoint presentation where I can continue to edit things as I like. I hope that answers your question, Bernice. Well, we're at time. If any other questions come up, feel free to reach out to me via email. What I'm going to do again is I'm going to upload this presentation onto our YouTube channel, and I'm going to be sending it to you along with some other links about how to do some of the stuff again. They're just going to be like quick tutorials. And I am, going to just send everything to you in one email, and you're free to look at it when you'd like to, whenever you're going to start your PowerPoint animations and want to use or PowerPoint slide decks and want to use animation, or if you want to share with colleagues who weren't able to attend today, I think that would be great too. We really want people to take advantage of these, cool features as much as possible. So, oh, thank you. I see in the chat, thank you guys for joining us today. I really appreciate it. So have a great day. Again, I'll try to get this out to you by the end of the day, but it may be tomorrow morning. But if you have any questions about anything that I've shown you today, just hit me up with an email and I'm happy to help. All right. But thank you guys so much. Have a great afternoon and see you later.